7 tips on how to improve your photos, especially if you're going on a holiday or traveling. And in this video, I'm going to focus on composition. So my name's Rona and I'm a photographer and also a content creator. And on this channel, I share advice for midlife women. But this video is for anyone who's passionate about photography. So these tips apply no matter what you're using to take your photos, whether you're using your phone or you're using a point and shoot camera or a really large camera like this digital SLR camera, which I use. So don't worry if it's just your phone. Lots of the photos which I'll be featuring in this video I took using my phone. So the first tip we're going to look at is the rule of thirds. And if we look at the photo that's on the screen now, and I'll describe to you how the rule of thirds works. So when you're looking through your phone or your camera, imagine that the screen is divided into 3 parts, both horizontally and vertically. Don't worry whether you're taking a landscape or a portrait image, this rule of thirds still applies. So you can see on this image here of this coastal scene, this is actually in Salcombe where I was last week, and we've got the thirds lines going across and also down. And you'll see that here I've put the sea meeting the land as one of the lines. So now on to some examples of the rule of thirds. And in this first image, you can see I put the shoreline. This is from the Isles of Scilly, and the shoreline there is the bottom line from the 2 horizontal lines. And on the second image, you can see I've used the structure going into the sea as the line on the bottom. You'll be able to see that we often go away to places by the sea, and this image on the left hand side is from the Isles of Scilly, and here the horizon line is the top line, and on the right is another coastal scene, and here we've got the foreground, which is actually where there is a line, and then also at the top where the horizon is, there's a line. So the horizon is a great place to put one of your lines, so your horizontal lines, to divide your image up into thirds. And you can actually set your phone, most phones enable you to do this, so you can have grid lines on it, and you can also set it on your camera. So that's really good, especially when you're first starting off using this technique, to help you get a gauge of where the lines are. Following on from the rule of thirds is the rule of thirds, but this time instead of just looking at the lines, now looking where those lines intersect. So you can see on the image here that I've got the sun is intersecting on one of the lines, and I put a little circle around it so you can see it. On the left hand side, this is a scene local to me, and this time I've used the light shining on the side of a building as the point of focus, and I've made sure that it's actually on the intersection of the lines. Then on the right hand side, a trip to Iceland we made earlier in the year, and I've got the geyser going up, and that is on the intersection of the lines. You'll notice it's one of my favourite techniques to use. This one here on the left hand side is in Suffolk, and here I've put the boat on the intersection. And then in Yorkshire a couple of years ago we were snowed in on holiday, and I've put the gate on one of the intersections. Now we're on to negative space, and negative space is basically leaving lots of space in your image, lots of white space to let your subject breathe. It makes for a less cluttered photo. As you can see on the first image here, this is the Isles of Scilly again, and you can see that I've left a lot of negative space at the top of the image with the sky. Another example on the left there is in Ile de Ré, where they have lots and lots of hollyhocks, or they do in the summer months, and I've just put that in the bottom right hand corner of the image, and all of the wall behind it is the negative space. And then on the right hand side, another photo from Suffolk, and here the sky is the negative space. But you'll also notice that I've used the rule of thirds in that I've got the pier going out on one of the lines of my rule of thirds. Staying on the Suffolk coast, we've got another image here showing the sky with negative space. So I've got, again, the third line from the bottom is where I've got the beach huts, and then I've got the sky making up lots of negative space. And then on the right hand side in Salcombe, when I was there last week, there were lots of agapanthus in bloom, so we've got lots of sky as negative space. Leading lines are a way to add depth and interest to your photos, and this photo is in Ile de Ré, and I've put some very faint white lines where you can see the top of the wall of the by the harbour, and then the line of the shops and the umbrellas outside the shops. And then the photo on the left is in Tresco Abbey Gardens on the island of Tresco in the Isles of Scilly, and there's a path leading up to a building. And on the right in Salcombe is a little jetty going out into the water, a pontoon, and you can see how your eye is drawn along the line on the jetty. The next one is foreground interest, and this is really useful to use when you're taking landscape photos to give some depth and interest at the front of the photo. So this is in Yorkshire again, and this is a wall I've got at the front here, but you can see I've still used the rule of thirds. So I've got the top line, the horizon is on one of the thirds. The next one is symmetry, and this is really easy to do when you've got a lake or some still water in front of you, like a swimming pool. This is in Mallorca a few years ago, and it was sunrise, and you can see I've got symmetry of the palm trees reflected in the swimming pool. And the next one is another one to add a bit of interest, is a frame within a frame. So here in this example, I've got a window frame, and I'm looking through and looking at the sea and that's outside. So that's another way of adding visual interest to your images. Taking great photos is one way of capturing and storing memories from your time away and your travels or holidays. And I hope you found these techniques useful. So we've got the rule of thirds, where you can split your image up either horizontally or vertically. You've got the rule of thirds with the intersection, so where those lines cross, put the point of interest where your eye is naturally drawn. Then we've got negative space, so you can make sure that you leave lots of sky or a wall or lots of sea in the image to make it really uncluttered. Then we had leading lines, and I showed you that image in the Tresco Abbey Gardens of the path going up to the building, and we also had the pontoon. Then we had the foreground interest, so it's great if you've got a landscape photo, as in an actual photo of a landscape, to have something in the foreground to give a bit of depth and interest to the image. Then we had symmetry, where I had the palm trees reflected in the swimming pool, and then we had the frame within the frame. So if you just remember one or two from this video, I would recommend using the rule of thirds and the intersection of the rule of thirds, and they will really help you to improve your photography. And it's all about practice at the end of the day. I've been photographing for many years, so these are hints and tips which I've picked up along the way. If you'd like to see some videos of where I have been on my travels, I'll link to the most recent one, which is Salcombe, and that will be on the screen now.